Hello guys, welcome to Saiyan What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Goku became the Time Emperor and got married with the Goddess of Eternity? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Blank, blank, underscore, blank. Chapter 1. Fractured Horizons. The familiar roar of the crowd washed over Goku as he tightened his worn orange belt. 32 World Martial Arts tournaments had come and gone since his childhood, yet the electric anticipation in his muscles remained unchanged. His opponent, a tall fighter with cybernetically enhanced limbs, bowed with mechanical precision across the white stone platform. Begin. The announcer's voice cracked through ancient speakers. Goku settled into his stance, a half-smile playing across his face. The cybernetic fighter launched forward with impressive speed, but to Goku's experienced eyes, the movement unfolded with the languid clarity of a leaf drifting through still air. He sidestepped effortlessly, allowing his opponent's enhanced fist to whistle past his ear. "You're pretty fast," Goku offered, genuinely impressed despite the gap in their abilities. "But you're telegraphing your left strikes about half a second before." The air between them shimmered, like heat rising from sun-baked stone. Goku's words died in his throat as he watched the impossible unfold. His opponent, fragmented. The cybernetic fighter's body remained whole, yet simultaneously separated into translucent layers, each moving with slightly different timing, attacking, defending, adjusting stance, all overlapping in contradictory simultaneity. Goku blinked hard, wondering if he'd somehow been struck without noticing. The crowd's cheering distorted, voices stretching and compressing like poorly tuned radio signals. He glanced toward the spectator stands and felt his heart stutter. Half the audience had not disappeared, exactly. They flickered between presence and absence, occupying the same space with ghostly uncertainty. "Hey, something weird is," Goku began, turning back to the referee, only to find the official's form smearing across his vision, leaving fragmented afterimages as if someone had dropped a photograph into water. The tournament arena itself began to shift. The white stone platform remained solid beneath Goku's feet, but the surrounding structures cycled through different configurations, sometimes the familiar tournament setup. Then briefly an ancient coliseum with stone columns, then a hyper-modern facility with hovering platforms, then back again, each transformation rippling into the next with increasing speed. Instinctively, Goku reached for his ki, centering himself in the familiar flow of energy. The sensation grounded him while chaos bloomed outward. His cybernetic opponent noticed the disture. Bands too late. The man's expression registered confusion just before his form shattered into prismatic shards that dissolved into nothingness. "Everyone get back," Goku shouted, leaping to the arena's edge where several spectators were beginning to fragment like his opponent. He reached for a young woman whose arm was becoming translucent, but his fingers passed through her dissolving form. A deafening crack split the air as reality itself seemed to fracture. Above the arena, the clear blue sky tore open like fabric, revealing a swirling vortex of colors no human eye was designed to process. From this impossible breach emerged a figure that descended with the controlled grace of absolute power. She appeared almost human, a woman of ageless beauty with pale lavender skin and flowing silver height hair that moved as if underwater despite the still air. Her eyes, however, betrayed her otherworldly nature, irises of shifting temporal patterns that reconfigured with every blink. Her attire meant to be both ancient ceremonial robes and crystalline armor simultaneously, the material flowing between states with each movement. "Son Goku," she spoke, her voice layering over itself in perfect harmonic resonance. "Your interference in the temporal matrix ends now." Without warning, she thrust her palm forward. A pulse of iridescent energy erupted from her hand, enveloping Goku in a field de. He felt both scorching and freezing simultaneously. To his shock, his body began responding in impossible ways. His right arm briefly reverted to childhood thinness, his torso remained in current form, while his left leg temporarily exhibited the withered appearance of extreme old age. "What are you doing to me?" Goku demanded, struggling against the disorienting sensation of existing in multiple age states simultaneously. "Containing a temporal anomaly," she answered coldly. Your energy signature is fracturing reality across 17 connected timelines. Goku countered instinctively, flaring his ki outward to disrupt her energy field. The technique worked, but with unexpected consequences. As his energy collided with hers, the fabric of reality around them tore completely. The tournament arena dissolved, and both combatants plummeted through a kaleidoscopic void before crashing into new surroundings. They landed on a city street, but not one from Goku's familiar Earth. Vehicles of Biz. A reconfiguration hovered above crystalline roadways, while buildings spiraled impossibly into a green-tinged sky with 3 moons visible despite the daylight. Pedestrians with subtle non-human characteristics scattered at their sudden appearance. "You're making this worse," the woman accused, adjusting her stance. "Your energy pattern is unprecedented, chaotic and self-amplifying." "Listen, I do. NT know who you are or what's happening," Goku responded, settling into a defensive position, "but I'm pretty sure I wasn't causing any problems until you showed up." "I am Chronoa, goddess of eternity," she declared, temporal energy crackling around her fingertips. "And you, Saiyan, have become a nexus of temporal distortion." She struck again, this time with concentrated precision. Bands of energy encircled Goku's limbs, attempting to lock him in a single temporal state. He responded by transforming, not to his full power, but enough that the sudden energy surge disrupted her bindings. The transformation's shockwave, however, fractured their surroundings again, and reality shifted. They now stood in a barren wasteland beneath a dying red sun. The ground was cracked obsidian, and the air carried the acrid taste of a world long abandoned. An extinct timeline variant, Chronoa observed with professional detachment, though Goku noticed a flicker of concern cross her features. Were she FTing through reality fractures at an accelerating rate? "Is that bad?" Goku asked, relaxing his stance slightly as he recognized the shift in her demeanor. "Catastrophic," she confirmed. These re-planned translocations were falling through damaged sections of the temporal membrane. Before she could elaborate, the landscape shattered again. They tumbled through the void before splashing into shallow water. They had arrived in a flooded city, skyscrapers rising from a vast ocean, their upper floors serving as the only habitable zones. Makeshift bridges connected the structures, upon shocked human observers pointed at their sudden appearance. "Fifth reality transition in under a minute," Chronoa murmured, genuine alarm now evident. "This isn't your doing, something else is." The world around them convulsed. Not merely another transition, but a violent temporal quake that transcended their immediate surroundings. Goku felt it resonating through his very being, a disturbance so fundamental it seemed to vibrate the atoms of his body at discordant frequencies. Chronoa's expression shifted from accusatory to genuinely frightened as she extended her awareness outward. "No," she whispered, her harmonious voice cracking. "No, no, no." The water beneath them began to boil without heat, molecules phasing in and out of existence. The city structures blurred, cycling through architectural variations like shuffled cards. "What is it?" Goku demanded, grabbing her shoulder as reality convulsed around them. "What's happening?" "Timeline collapse," she answered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Not just here, everywhere. Hundreds of reality branches are disintegrating simultaneously. This shouldn't be possible." Another quake, stronger than the first, sent them tumbling. The flooded city dissolved into unraveling threads of reality. As they fell through conceptual space, Goku caught glimpses of other worlds simultaneously unraveling, a crystal metropolis crumbling into light. A prehistoric landscape where dinosaurs flickered like faulty holograms, a battlefield where armies of unusual beings watched their weapons dissolve in their hands. Chronoa seized his wrist with surprising strength. "I was wrong about you," she admitted quickly. "You're not causing this, but you might be our only hope of surviving it. Our energies need to synchronize, now. Just tell me what to do." Goku responded without hesitation. "Your key control, adapt it to match my temporal frequency." Goku had never been a theoretical fighter. His strength had always come from instinct and adaptation. He observed the energy flowing around Chronoa, not unlike ki, but vibrating with complex patterns that reminded him of the ripples created when multiple stones are thrown into a still pond. He adjusted his own energy output, attempting to create complementary waves rather than matching hers exactly. For a terrifying moment, Nothing happened except increased dissonance as reality continued disintegrating around them. Then, suddenly, their combined energies clicked into alignment. A sphere of stability formed around them, a pocket of protected space amid chaotic dissolution. "It's working," Chronoa exclaimed with surprise. "Your approach shouldn't be effective, but somehow." "I'm improvising," Goku admitted with a hint of his characteristic smile. "It's kind of what I do." Chronoa nodded curtly, then closed her eyes in concentration. Their protective bubble expanded, creating enough stable space for her to make precise movements with both hands, complex patterns that seemed to pluck at invisible strings in the fabric of reality itself. "I'm creating a pathway to the Eternity Nexus," she explained between focused breaths. "My headquarters exists outside conventional temporal constraint. NTS. It should remain stable despite the collapse." "Should?" Goku questioned. "Nothing like this has happened in 17 billion years," she responded tersely. "We're beyond precedent." With a final intricate gesture, Chronoa tore open a portal unlike any Goku had ever seen. Rather than a simple breach in space, this opening seemed to fold reality itself, revealing layers upon layers of dimensio. Null complexity before resolving into a crystalline corridor that shimmered with its own internal light. "Quickly," she urged, her voice strained from effort. "I can't maintain the connection for long." They leapt through together just as their protective bubble began to collapse. The portal sealed behind them with a sound like shattering glass played in reverse. They stood in a corridor that defied conventional architecture, crystalline surfaces that seemed simultaneously solid and fluid, angles that connected in geometrically impossible ways, and walls that contained ghostly images of events occurring across countless timelines. Goku stumbled, overwhelmed by sudden temporal vertigo. The corridor didn't simply exist in the present moment, it somehow existed at all points in time simultaneously. He saw ghostly images of himself overlapping in the same space, younger versions, older versions, variations that had taken different life paths, all momentarily visible before his perception stabilized. "First visit to a non-temporal location?" Chronoa asked, her tone softening slightly as she steadied him. "Your consciousness is adjusting to perceiving multiple time streams simultaneously." "It's a lot," Goku admitted, blinking as the overlapping images gradually resolved into a single coherent view of their surroundings. "Where exactly are we?" "The Eternity Nexus," she answered, gestu ring for him to follow as she strode purposefully down the impossible corridor. "The administrative center of temporal operations for this multiversal cluster." The passage opened into a vast central chamber that stole the breath from Goku's lungs. The space extended beyond what should have been physically possible, with soaring crystalline spires that seemed to grow rather than having been constructed. The ceiling, if it could be called that, appeared to be an observation window into deep space, though the constellations shifted in patterns Goku had never seen in any night sky. At the chamber's center floated a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light, a complex geometric form that continuously reconfigured itself while maintaining perfect symmetry. Within and around it, countless glowing threads stretched outward in all directions, creating a three-dimensional web of luminous connections. "The Chrono's heart," Chronoa explained, her voice taking on a reverent quality. "The regulatory engine that maintains the stability of all connected timelines." As Goku observed more closely, he noticed with growing alarm that many of the threads were darkening, fraying, or had already severed completely. The crystal engine itself pulsed with increasing irregularity, sections dimming while others flared with compensation. "It's breaking," he observed unnecessarily. "Yes," Chronoa confirmed grimly. "Each thread represents a timeline cluster, thousands of individual reality branches bound by common causal events. Those darkened sections represent complete temporal collapse." A new voice interrupted them, rapid, precise, and slightly breathless. "Current failure rate accelerating exponentially. We've lost 17% of monitored timelines in the past 9 minutes. With cascade failures predicted to reach critical threshold within 78 hours. The speaker approached from a side chamber filled with floating crystalline displays. She appeared human, awam, and in her early 30s with unkempt black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and intelligent eyes behind simple glasses. She wore what looked like a laboratory coat modified with crystalline components that glowed with the same energy as the Chrono's heart. Multiple holographic displays hovered around her, continuously updating with complex equations. Goddess Chronoa, the primary contain me. NT algorithms are failing faster than I can rewrite them, she continued without introducing herself, her attention divided between multiple displays. I've attempted implementing quantum buffers at 7 critical junctures. But the temporal decay accelerates around any artificial support structure. She finally noticed Goku and blinked in surprise. Oh, you brought someone from a protected timeline. That's against at least 16 protocols, but given the circumstances, I suppose conventional restrictions are. Kiyomi, Chronoa interrupted firmly. This is Son Goku. I initially believed he was causing the disruptions. But now I suspect he may be connected to them in a different capacity. Kiyomi adjusted her glasses and studied Goku with sudden intense focus. Her eyes widened as IPLE displays around her erupted with new data. Fascinating. His temporal signature is, I've never seen anything like it. Multiphasic resonance across at least 9-dimensional frequencies, with a completely unique harmonic pattern in the quantum substrate. She circled Goku, seemingly forgetting social norms as she scanned him with various crystalline instruments that materialized in her hands. Subject appears physically ordinary, but his cellular chronon absorption rate is off the charts. How are you not temporally combusting from this level of chronal saturation? Goku began uncertainly. He doesn't know what that means, Chronoa interjected. Goku is a warrior, not a temporal physicist. Right, sorry, Kiyomi nodded rapidly. You're somehow absorbing time energy that should tear apart your molecular structure. But instead, your cells are integrating it. I need samples immediately, hair, blood, tissue, to understand the mechanism. Before Goku could respond, the entire nexus shuddered violently. The crystalline walls momentarily phased out of existence before reconstituting. The threads within the Chrono's heart convulsed, dozens more darkening simultaneously. Major collapse in timeline cluster CR7, Kiyomi reported, her voice tight as she turned back to her displays. Structural integrity compromised across all connected branches. CR7, Goku questioned, looking to Chronoa. What's that? The goddess's expression softened with unexpected compassion. That designation includes your native timeline, Goku. Your Earth, your friends and family, they're in the affected cluster. Goku's heart clenched. Can we stop it? Can we fix whatever's happening? Before Chronoa could answer, a distortion appeared in the chamber's air, a spot where reality seemed thinner, the edges blurred and unstable. The disturbance expanded rapidly, forming a swirling vortex of quantum uncertainty. Breach in progress, Kiyomi shouted, activating defensive protocols with frantic gestures. Unauthorized quantum tunneling detected. From the vortex emerged a figure that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. A woman, or something approximating a woman, with pale blue skin that occasionally turned transparent, revealing a skeletal structure that glowed with internal energy. Her short silver hair defied gravity, floating as if underwater. Most disturbing were her eyes. Completely black except for tiny pinpoints of white light that moved independently of each other, scanning the chamber from multiple angles simultaneously. She wore what appeared to be a skin-tight suit. It composed of constantly shifting geometric patterns that occasionally revealed the void beneath. In her hand, she held a weapon that hurt to look at directly, a blade that existed and didn't exist simultaneously, leaving probabilistic afterimages with every slight movement. Found you, she snarled, her voice echoing strangely as if coming from multiple sources. Her gaze locked onto Goku with predatory intensity. The Nexus Catalyst, the anomaly that erased my world. Without further warning, she launched herself toward Goku with impossible speed, her form blurring not from velocity but from existing in multiple probable positions simultaneously. Her quantum blade sliced toward his throat, the weapon's edge threatening to sever his connection to reality itself rather than merely cutting flesh. Goku reacted instinctively, sidestepping while channeling ki to reinforce his physical presence in this single reality. The blade passed through the afterimage of his movement, leaving a momentar hole in the air where contradictory states of existence briefly nullified each other. I don't know who you are, Goku stated firmly, settling into a defensive stance, but I haven't erased anyone's world. Liar, she hissed, her form flickering between positions unpredictably. I watched it happen. My entire timeline, billions of lives, reduced to quantum foam while your energy signature expanded across the dimensional boundary. She attacked again, this time splitting into 3 semi-transparent versions of herself that approached from different angles simultaneously. Goku leapt upward, narrowly avoiding the convergence of quantum blades, but one edge grazed his ankle. The contact didn't draw blood but instead caused the affected area to momentarily exist in an uncertain state, his foot briefly becoming a probability cloud rather than solid matter. "Mitsuko, stop," Chronoa commanded, stepping forward with authority. "He isn't responsible for what happened to your timeline." The quantum woman, Mitsuko, hesitated, her multiple forms temporarily realigning into a single more stable entity. "You defend him, goddess. After what his existence has cost. The collapse patterns aren't originating from him," Chronoa stated firmly. "He's connected to them, yes, but not as a cause, perhaps as an effect or counterbalance." "Convenient theory," Mitsuko sneered, her form beginning to fragment. Again as her emotional state destabilized her quantum coherence. "It's more than theory," Kiyomi interjected, cautiously approaching with a crystalline display hovering before her. "Look at these readings. During your attack just now, 3 more timelines stabilized momentarily when his energy responded defensively. The resonance pattern is inverse to the collapse sequence." Mitsuko's multiple gazes focused on the display, her expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and reluctant reconsideration. "That's not possible." "Apparently it is," Kiyomi responded, pushing her glasses up. "His cellular structure is creating some kind of dampening field against the temporal decay, completely accidentally, based on his confused expression." She glanced at Goku apologetically. "No offense intended. None taken," Goku replied honestly. "I don't understand any of this." Another violent shudder rocked the Eternity Nexus. This time, several crystalline pillars cracked before reforming, and the Chronos' heart's pulsations became increasingly erratic. "Critical failure in progress," Kiyomi reported urgently. "The regulatory algorithms can't compensate for the acceleration rate." "Goddess," Mitsuko addressed Chronoa with reluctant formality, her form stabilizing further as she focused. "If he's truly not the cause, could he be the contingency?" Chronoa's eyes widened at the implication. "The prophecy of temporal regression. That's a theoretical failsafe, never meant to be implemented." "What prophecy?" Goku asked, growing increasingly concerned as another tremor shook the chamber. Kiyomi was frantically analyzing new data streams, her eyes darting between displays. "His resonance pattern, goddess, it matches the theoretical frequency of the Time Emperor configuration." "That's impossible," Chronoa whispered, though her expression suggested she was beginning to consider the possibility. No mortal could withstand that level of temporal integration. "What's a Time Emperor?" Goku pressed, instinctively sensing the importance of these exchanges despite not understanding the terminology. Chronoa turned to him, her ageless features grave. "A theoretical failsafe embed in the original design of the multiverse. If the established order of time faces existential threat, power would consolidate in a singular entity, an emperor who could regulate the flow of time direct rather than through the algorithmic systems of the Chronos' heart." "And you think that's me?" Goku asked incredulously. "Not by design," Chronoa clarified, "but your unique cellular structure, combined with your history of transcending dimensional limitations through your various transformations, seems to have accidentally created a compatible vessel for the Emperor's function." Another tremor, stronger than the previous ones, sent fissures spreading through the chamber floor. The Chronos' heart's light fluctuated dramatically, briefly dimming to near darkness before flaring painfully bright. "We don't have time for theoretical debates," Kiyomi interjected urgently. "Timeline Cluster County Route 7 is approaching irreversible collapse, along with 16 other critical junctures." Mitsuko's expression darkened. "So my world is already gone, but his gets special consideration." "All worlds matter," Chronoa stated firmly. "But we must stabilize critical junctures to prevent complete multiversal collapse." Goku stepped forward, his expression resolute. "If there's something I can do to help, to save any of these worlds, just tell me what it is." Chronoa and Kiyomi exchanged meaningful glances. Kiyomi nodded slightly, then approached one of the crystalline consoles. "I can attempt a partial interface, channeling a portion of the Emperor's function through him temporarily. It won't be a permanent solution, but it might buy us time to develop one." The process is dangerous, Chronoa warned Goku. Your consciousness will be exposed to thousands of timelines simultaneously. Most minds would shatter instantly. Goku smiled slightly. I've faced worse odds. Debatable, Mitsuko muttered, but she made no move to interfere. Kiyomi worked rapidly at the console, crystalline components configuring under her experienced guidance. I'm establishing a modified connection protocol, limiting initial exposure to prevent cognitive overload while maintaining sufficient bandwidth for regulatory function. Chronoa moved to a position directly before the Chrono's heart, her hands weaving complex patterns that left trails of temporal energy in the air. I'll create a buffer zone, filtering the raw temporal current through my consciousness before it reaches yours. What do I need to do? Goku asked, moving to stand where Kiyomi directed. Focus your ki inward rather than projecting it outward, Chronoa instructed. Imagine it as a reservoir rather than a weapon. When the connection forms, allow the new energy to mix with your own. Don't resist it, but don't surrender to it either. Balance is essential. Goku nodded, centering himself as he would before a major battle. He closed his eyes, drawing his considerable energy inward until it became a dense, controlled core at his center. He technique wasn't unfamiliar. Certain transformations required similar focus, but the application was entirely new. Initiating partial Emperor Protocol, Kiyomi announced, her fingers dancing across crystalline interfaces. Chronon transfer at 10% capacity, 15%, 20%. Goku felt it immediately, a foreign energy entering his system, similar to ki in some ways but fundamentally different in others. While ki was life energy, this force carried the weight of existence itself, past, present, and future compressed into raw power. His instinct was to channel and direct it as he would his own energy. But he remembered Chronoa's warning and instead allowed it to permeate his being without resistance. 30%, Kiyomi continued, monitoring his responses carefully. Vital signs stable, neural activity increasing but within tolerance thresholds. The chamber around them began to stabilize as Goku's connection strengthened. The fissures in the floor sealed themselves, and the Chrono's heart's pulsations became more regular, though still not completely normal. 40%, Kiyomi called out. Approaching critical threshold for untrained consciousness. The influx of temporal energy intensified. Goku's perception began to expand beyond the chamber, glimpses of countless timelines flickering through his awareness like pages of a book flipped too quickly to read. The sensation was disorienting, threatening to overwhelm his sense of self as billions of possibilities competed for his attention. His neural patterns are destabilizing, Kiyomi warned. We should hold at this level. It's not enough, Chronoa responded tensely. The critical junctures are still deteriorating. Goku forced himself to speak through the disorientation. I can handle more. Are you certain? Chronoa asked, genuine concern in her voice. No, Goku admitted with surprising honesty. But necessary risks are still necessary. After a moment's hesitation, Chronoa nodded to Kiyomi. Continue the integration. Increase gradually. 45%, 50%. Kiyomi counted as she adjusted the flow. The expanded awareness intensified exponentially. Goku no longer merely glimpsed timelines, he experienced them. Billions of lives flashed through his consciousness. Births, deaths, joys, sorrows, triumphs, failures, all simultaneously present. The weight of so much existe. NCE threatened to crush his individual identity beneath an ocean of collective experience. Fighting against dissolution, Goku adapted his battle meditation techniques. Just as he maintained awareness of multiple opponents in physical combat, he now categorized and organized the flood of temporal information. Rather than attempting to process each timeline individually, he perceived patterns and connections, the underlying structure of reality rather than its infinite specific manifestations. 60%, Kiyomi announced, her voice betraying surprise. His consciousness is adapting. Figuring to accommodate the input volume. Remarkable, Chronoa murmured. He's intuitively developing methods that took me millennia to master. The Chrono's heart responded to Goku's growing connection, its light stabilizing into a steady, powerful glow. Throughout the nexus, fractured crystals regenerated, and the violent tremors subsided to minor vibrations. Critical junctures are stabilizing, Kiyomi reported with cautious optimism. Decay rate reduced by 43% and declining. Mitsuko observed with reluctant fascination, her quantum form settling into greater coherence as the surrounding temporal field stabilized. He's actually doing it. A mortal is regulating the time stream. 70% capacity, Kiyomi continued, increasingly confident. Approaching safe maximum for temporary integration. Goku had found a tenuous equilibrium, maintaining his core identity while processing the vast temporal input. His perception now extended across the multiversal tapestry, allowing him to sense critical stress points in reality's fabric. With careful adjustments to his energy output, he intuitively supported weakened temporal structures, redirecting the flow of time around damaged sections like a river finding new channels around obstacles. Timeline Cluster County Route 7 showing significant recovery, Kiyomi announced. Stability index rising from critical to moderate risk levels. A shrill alarm suddenly cut through the momentary optimism. One of Kiyomi's displays flashed urgent warnings as new data poured in. New critical breach detected, she called out, her voice tight with renewed concern. Timeline PT-11 experiencing catastrophic structural failure. Complete collapse imminent. What's PT-11? Goku asked, his voice strained from the effort of maintaining temporal connection. A timeline distant from your native reality, Chronoa explained quickly. No direct causal connection to your world, but home to approximately 12 billion sentient beings. Can we stabilize it like we did with CR7? Goku questioned. Kiyomi's expression was grim as she analyzed incoming data. The collapse pattern is different, more aggressive and deeply rooted. We have STA. Bilization protocols for County Route 7 because it's designated as a nexus reality with preservation priority. PT-11 is classified as peripheral, important but not critical to overall multiversal stability. Meaning what? Goku pressed. Meaning we have no established protocols for its preservation, Chronoa stated plainly. Given our limited resources and the ongoing crisis, standard procedure would be to allow PT-11 to collapse while focusing on protecting Nexus realities. Allow it to collapse, Goku repeated incredulously. You're talking about billions of lives. Trillions of lives are at stake across the multiverse. Chronoa countered, though her tone lacked conviction. Difficult choices are part of temporal management. Goku's expression hardened with determination. There has to be a way to save both. Theoretically, Kiyomi interjected, rapidly calculating possibilities. With your connection to the Chronos heart, you could attempt direct intervention, essentially creating a new stab. Ilization protocol specifically for PT-11. But it would require diverting significant energy from other recovery efforts, potentially endangering CR7's current progress. Including your home reality, Chronoa added pointedly. The implications were clear. Saving this unknown timeline might come at the cost of endangering his own world, his friends and family. Goku closed his eyes, feeling the weight of a decision no mortal was ever meant to make. Through his expanded awareness, he could sense the PT-11 timeline, feel the billions of consciousnesses experiencing the beginning of their world's end. Fear, confusion, desperation echoed across dimensional boundaries. Simultaneously, he felt the familiar resonance of his home reality, the energy signatures of those he loved, unaware of how close they had come to non-existence. How much time do we have? He asked quietly. PT-11 will reach irreversible dissolution in approximately 78 seconds, Kiyomi answered. Decision threshold for effective intervention is 19 seconds from now. Chronoa watched him intently, her ancient eyes revealing nothing of what decision she expected or hoped he would make. Mitsuko stepped closer, our quantum form briefly destabilizing with emotional intensity. Choose wisely, anomaly. I've witnessed what happens when a world ends, when everything that ever mattered to you dissolves into nothing. No one should experience that fate. Goku opened his eyes, decision made. Kiyomi, show me how to redirect the energy to save PT-11. But your world, Chronoa began. As currently stable, Goku finished for her. These people have no one else to help them. I can't turn my back on that responsibility. After a moment of silence, Chronoa nodded with what might have been respect. As you wish, Emperor. The title startled him, but there was no time to dwell on it. Kiyomi quickly guided him through the necessary adjustments, redirecting temporal energy from secondary recovery efforts toward the critically endangered timeline. Through his connection to the Chronos heart, Goku could feel the massive power flowing through him, reshaping reality according to his will. The effort was immense, far beyond any physical exertion he had ever experienced. This wasn't merely channeling energy outward but restructuring the fundamental fabric of existence. Sweat beaded on his forehead as strain showed in every line of his body. PT-11 stabilization at 27%, Kiyomi reported. 41%, 56%. Goku pushed harder, drawing deeper on his connection to the Chrono's heart. The crystalline chamber around them resonated with the effort, surfaces briefly becoming transparent to reveal the complex energy channels flowing throughout the Eternity Nexus. 82%, Kiyomi continued. Genuine amazement in her voice. Approaching minimum viability threshold, with a final surge of will, Goku channeled everything he had into the stabilization effort. For a brief moment, his body literally glowed from within, cellular structure becoming temporarily visible as temporal energy illuminated him from the atomic level outward. Stabilization achieved, Kiyomi announced triumphantly. PT-11 temporal integrity restored to sustainable levels. The massive exertion took its toll immediately. As the emergency passed, Goku staggered, the connection to the Chrono's heart fluctuating wildly as his consciousness struggled to maintain the complex integration. His physical form began showing signs of temporal backlash, hair briefly cycling through black, gray, and white as his body aged decades forward then reverted to normal in seconds. Cut the connection, Chronoa ordered sharply. His system can't handle prolonged exposure without proper preparation. Kiyomi worked frantically at her console, initiating disconnection protocols. Emperor function disengaging at controlled intervals. 70%, 60%. As the temporal energy receded, Goku's expanded awareness contracted. The billions of simultaneous experiences faded from his consciousness, leaving only echoes of a perspective beyond mortal comprehension. With each percentage decrease, his body stabilized further, settling back into normal temporal synchronization. 20%, 10%, connection terminated, Kiyomi finally announced. Goku dropped to one knee, physically and mentally, exhausted in ways he had never experienced before. Despite his immense stamina and recovery abilities, channeling temporal energy had taxed him at a fundamental level beyond mere physical exertion. Did it work? He asked between labored breaths. Are both timelines safe? For now, Chronoa confirmed, approaching him with an unreadable expression. You've bought them time, but the underlying crisis remains. These collapses aren't natural. Something is causing them, something powerful enough to threaten the entire multiversal structure. Mitsuko observed Goku with newfound complexity in her gaze, suspicion tempered with reluctant respect. You chose strangers over your own reality. Why? Goku looked up at her, his expression straightforward despite his exhaustion. They needed help more urgently. My friends are strong. They've faced world-ending threats before. These people had no one. A simplistic answer, Mitsuko noted, though without her earlier hostility. But an honest one, Chronoa interjected. And perhaps exactly the perspective needed for the challenges ahead. Goku slowly rose to his feet, his strength gradually returning. What happens now? Before Chronoa could respond, a new distortion appeared in the chamber, different from Mitsuko's quantum breach. This disturbance cut through reality with surgical precision, edges glowing with disciplined energy rather than chaotic quantum fluctuations. From this perfect circle stepped a woman whose presence commanded immediate attention. Tall and powerfully built, she wore armor of some crystalline material that reflected temporal energy in disciplined patterns. Her dark skin bore luminous markings that pulsed in time with the Chrono's heart itself, and her eyes glowed with internal light that shifted between gold and white. At her hips hung twin weapons, short swords with blades of pure temporal energy contained within crystalline frameworks. Guardian Sentinel Serafina, Chronoa acknowledged with formal respect. Your presence honors the Nexus. The newcomer surveyed the chamber with critical assessment before focusing on Goku with laser intensity. So the rumors are true. You've initiated Emperor Protocol on an untrained mortal. Emergency circumstances required immediate action, Chronoa responded diplomatically. Desperation rarely justifies violation of foundational principles, Serafina countered, her voice resonant with authority. Her hand rested on one sword hilt as she approached Goku. You may have temporarily delayed collapse, but installing an unprepared consciousness as Time Emperor risks greater disaster than the one you sought to prevent. I didn't ask for this position, Goku stated calmly, meeting her intense gaze without flinching. Which is precisely the problem, Serafina replied. The Emperor's role requires millennia of preparation, philosophical understanding of temporal ethics, technical mastery of Chronon manipulation, and spiritual discipline to withstand the burden of multiversal awareness. Her hand tightened on her weapon. By ancient protocol, I challenge your claim to the Emperor's mantle. Prove your worthiness through trial of temporal combat, or relinquish the connection permanently. Serafina, Chronoa began warningly, this is neither the time nor. An urgent alert from Kiyomi's console interrupted the confrontation. All eyes turned to the temporal scientist as she processed incoming data with visible alarm. Multiple critical alerts, she announced. 17 timeline clusters approaching simultaneous collapse threshold, including, she paused, glancing at Goku, CR7. Your home reality is destabilizing again, and more rapidly than before. What? How? Chronoa demanded, rushing to examine the data herself. The pattern suggests temporal backlash, Kiyomi explained rapidly. Our intervention created ripple effects that temporarily accelerated decay in connected timelines. It's as if something is actively countering our stabilization efforts. Or someone, Mitsuko added ominously. Serafina's expression remained stern, but she removed her hand from her weapon. It seems our trial must wait. Immediate action takes precedence. Goku stepped forward, determination overriding exhaustion. Connect me again. I can help. Your system hasn't recovered from the first integration, Kiyomi objected. A second attempt so soon could cause permanent damage to your temporal coherence. And yet we have no choice, Chronoa stated grimly. Without Emperor-level intervention, those 17 clusters will collapse within minutes. Then do it, Goku insisted. Whatever the risk to me, it's worth taking. Serafina studied him with narrowed eyes. You would risk yourself again, knowing the potential cost. Wouldn't you? Goku countered simply. After a moment of tense silence, Serafina nodded once, a minimal acknowledgement. Perhaps there is something of the Emperor in you after all. Proceed with the connection. Kiyomi reluctantly began reconfiguring the interface while Chronoa prepared the energy conduits. Goku returned to his position, centering himself despite lingering exhaustion. This time, he knew what to expect, both the disorientation and the techniques to manage it. Initiating emergency reintegration, Kiyomi announced, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency across crystalline controls. Chronon transfer at 15% capacity, 25. The temporal energy flowed into Goku once more, but this time the transition was rougher, his partially recovered system struggling to reaccommodate the foreign power. His body flickered between temporal states more violently than before, momentarily appearing as a child, then his current self, then an elderly man with weathered features. His physical form is destabilizing, Kiyomi warned, temporal coherence fluctuating beyond safe parameters. Push through it, Goku managed through gritted teeth. I can handle it. Chronoa moved closer, placing her hands on either side of his head without quite touching him. Focus on my energy signature. Use it as an anchor point. Goku locked onto her presence, a fixed constant amid the chaos of temporal flux. Gradually, his form stabilized, though occasional ripples of temporal displacement still coursed through him. 40% transfer, Kiyomi continued. Timeline clusters approaching critical threshold in 53 seconds. It's not enough, Chronoa stated tensely. We need at least 60% to affect multiple clusters simultaneously. Then give me 60%, Goku insisted. At your current recovery level, that could be fatal, Kiyomi warned. Do it anyway, Goku commanded, his voice taking on an unfamiliar resonance, echoing slightly as if spoken across multiple timelines simultaneously. Serafina's eyes widened slightly at the tone. The Emperor's voice, she murmured. It's manifesting naturally. Kiyomi hesitated only briefly before continuing the transfer. 50%, 55. As the connection deepened, Goku's awareness expanded once more across the multiversal tapestry. This time, however, he focused specifically on the endangered timeline clusters, particularly his home reality. Through the connection, he could sense the wrongness, decay spreading like cracks through the foundation of existence itself. 60%, Kiyomi announced. Maximum safe threshold exceeded. His cellular chronon saturation is approaching critical levels. The strain was immense, far worse than the previous attempt. Goku felt as if his very atoms were being pulled in 17 different directions simultaneously. Yet beneath the pain, he sensed something else, a pattern to the collapses that suggested deliberate intent rather than natural entropy. "Someone's doing this," he managed to say, his voice still carrying that strange resonance. "I can feel a presence, targeting specific structural points in the timelines." "Can you counter it?" Chronoa asked urgently. Goku closed his eyes, extending his awareness further. "I'm trying, but it's like fighting an invisible opponent. I can see the damage but not the cause." 27 seconds to irreversible collapse, Kiyomi warned. Serafina stepped forward, drawing both temporal blades. "Permission to join the effort, goddess." Chronoa nodded. "Granted." The Guardian Sentinel thrust her weapons into the crystalline floor on either side of Goku. The blades pulsed with disciplined temporal energy that flowed upward into his connection, strengthening and focusing it with military precision. "Guardian technique. Temporal bulwark." Serafina intoned formally. "I offer my discipline to guide your power." The additional support created a framework that Goku instinctively recognized, like a martial arts form providing structure for raw strength. He channeled his expanded awareness through this discipline, focusing the Emperor's power with newfound precision. "It's working," Kiyomi exclaimed. K rates decreasing across all 17 clusters. Through the connection, Goku sensed his home reality stabilizing, familiar energy signatures no longer wavering on extinction's edge. Relief flooded through him, momentarily strengthening his focus despite the physical toll. "Stabilization at 43%, Kiyomi reported. 57, 68. Just as success seemed within reach. Goku felt it, a counter-pressure pushing against his efforts with tremendous force. Whatever entity was causing the collapses had noticed their intervention and was now actively fighting back. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced, not merely opposing energy but a fundamental negation of his very existence. "Something's fighting back," he gasped, temporal displacement rippling through his body more violently as the struggle intensified. "Impossible," Chronoa whispered, her calm facade cracking. "Nothing should have that level of temporal influence except the Emperor," Serafina finished grimly. "Or its equivalent." Mitsuko moved closer, her quantum form flickering with agitation. "It's him, isn't it? The destroyer of my world." Chronoa didn't answer directly, but her expression confirmed Mitsuko's suspicion. Instead, she placed her hands directly on Goku's shoulders, breaking countless protocols to establish direct energy contact. "Take what you need from me," she offered, her voice carrying absolute authority. "As goddess of eternity, I freely offer my power." The transfer was immediate and overwhelming, pure temporal essence flowing from an immortal being into Goku's already overtaxed system. For a terrifying moment, his physical form lost cohesion entirely, becoming a humanoid shape composed of shifting temporal energy. The chamber around them resonated sympathetically, crystalline surfaces briefly becoming transparent as reality itself acknowledged the unprecedented power convergence. "Stabilization at 83%. Kiyomi called out, her voice barely audible over the energy discharge. 91, 97, complete stabilization achieved. The opposing presence recoiled, its influence temporarily broken. Goku could feel it retreating, withdrawing to some unreachable point beyond conventional reality. The sensation left him with profound unease, not victory, merely postponement of a conflict yet to come. Disengaging Emperor Protocol, Kiyomi announced, initiating the disconnection sequence. As the temporal energy receded, leaving Goku's consciousness, the physical consequences of overexertion manifested dramatically. His body cycled rapidly through different age states, child, adult, elder, before settling into his normal form. He collapsed to his knees, every muscle trembling from strain beyond mortal endurance. His cellular structure is showing signs of temporal fracturing, Kiyomi reported urgently. We need to stabilize him before permanent damage occurs. Chronoa knelt beside him, her hands glowing with NTLE temporal energy as she worked to regulate his disrupted time flow. Your mortal form wasn't designed to channel such power, she murmured, concern evident in her ageless features. Yet you with STO'd it longer than should have been possible. Did it work? Goku asked, his voice hoarse. Are the timelines safe? Temporarily, Serafina answered, retrieving her blades from the floor. Her stern expression had softened marginally. You've bought us time, but the underlying threat remains. And it knows we're fighting back now, Mitsuko added ominously. Kiyomi approached with a crystalline device that hummed with regulatory energy. This should help stabilize your temporal coherence, she explained, placing it against his chest. The device adhered to his skin, gradually synchronizing his fractured time flow until the visible aging fluctuations subsided. What happens now? Goku asked as strength slowly returned to his limbs. Chronoa rose to her feet, her expression resolute. Now we prepare you properly. If you're to serve as Time Emperor, even temporarily, you need training, knowledge, and preparation that normally takes centuries. We don't have centuries, Serafina observed pragmatically. No, Chronoa agreed. We have days, perhaps weeks at most before the next major assault. Which means we must compress millennia of preparation into whatever time remains. She turned to address all present. Kiyomi will analyze the stabilization data to identify patterns in the attacks. Mitsuko will use her quantum perception to search for traces of our adversary in the void between realities. Serafina will begin Goku's combat training in temporal techniques. And you? Goku asked, slowly rising to his feet. Chronoa's expression became solemn. I will prepare the sacred union rite. UAL, a ceremonial binding that hasn't been performed since the early days of this cosmic cycle. It may be our only hope of creating a Time Emperor powerful enough to face what comes. Sacred union? Goku questioned. A form of cosmic marriage, Chronoa explained simply. Between the Emperor of Time and the Goddess of Eternity. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over all present. Serafina's expression tightened with disapproval, while Mitsuko and Kiyomi exchanged surprised glances. Is that necessary? Goku asked carefully. Potentially, Chronoa answered, but it is a last resort. To be considered only if all other options fail. For now, we focus on your training and recovery. She turned away, addressing the group once more. We face an enemy with power to threaten all existence. Whatever our differences, whatever our separate paths have been until now, we must stand united. The multiverse itself depends on it. As the others dispersed to their assigned tasks, Goku remained briefly in the chamber's center, gazing up at the Chrono's heart. Its stabilized glow reflected in his eyes as he considered the weight of responsibility that had been thrust upon him. Not merely a world or universe to protect, but all of existence across countless realities. I never asked to be emperor, he murmured to himself. The worthy seldom do, Serafina responded unexpectedly from behind him. Come, your first lesson in temporal combat begins now. Time waits for no one, not even its emperor. With a slight nod, Goku followed her from the chamber, leaving behind the life he had known and stepping fully into a destiny beyond anything he could have imagined. Chapter 2. Sovereign Convergence. 3 weeks had passed since Goku's emergency ascension to Interim Time Emperor, THR. Weeks that simultaneously felt like moments and eternities within the non-temporal environment of the Eternity Nexus. In a crystalline training chamber designed to withstand extreme energy discharge, Goku stood in perfect stillness. Eyes closed in concentration as sweat beaded across his forehead. Your temporal aura is fluctuating again, Serafina observed, circling him with critical assessment. Control the resonance pattern. Time responds to intention, not merely strength. Goku exhaled slowly, adjusting his energy with subtle precision that would have been impossible for him before these grueling weeks of training. A faint iridescent field became visible around him, similar to his ki aura but composed of shifting temporal patterns rather than raw power. Better, Serafina acknowledged, though her tone remained stern. Now extend your awareness to the practice targets. At the chamber's far end stood 7 crystalline pillars, each containing a suspended object in temporal stasis, a falling water droplet, a shattering glass sphere, a blooming flower, a decaying fruit, a burning paper, a melting ice crystal, and a pendulum at mid-swing. Select the 3rd pillar and accelerate its time flow by exactly 62 years. Serafina instructed. No more, no less. Goku extended his right hand, focusing his awareness on the blooming flower suspended in temporal stasis. Unlike his familiar ki techniques that projected energy outward as force, This required precise manipulation of the target's relationship with time itself. He allowed his consciousness to merge partially with the flower's temporal field, then carefully adjusted the flow rate. The crystal pillar glowed as the suspended blossom resumed its time flow at accelerated rate, bud unfurling into full bloom, petals dually shifting from vibrant color to faded hues, eventually drying and crumbling into dust before his control faltered, accidentally accelerating the final moments into complete molecular breakdown. 67 years, Serafina stated flatly. You overshot by 5 years and lost control at the terminal phase. Again, Goku lowered his hand, frustration evident despite his usual optimism. It's nothing like ki control. With energy projection, intensity is straightforward, more power, stronger effect. But this, the harder I focus, the more unpredictable it becomes. Because you're thinking like a warrior rather than a timekeeper. Serafina replied, her luminous eyes studying him intently. Time isn't something to be dominated or overcome. It must be understood, respected, guided with gentle precision. She demonstrated, extending her own hand toward the shattered glass sphere. Under her influence, the fragments reversed their explosion pattern with perfect control, reassembling into a whole orb before resuming their outward trajectory, then freezing precisely at the moment where the first fracture lines appeared. You see, she asked, not control through force, but harmony through understanding. I'm trying, Goku responded, wiping sweat from his brow. But after a lifetime of channeling power one way, it's like learning to write with my opposite hand. Something almost resembling sympathy flickered across Serafina's features before her professional demeanor reasserted itself. The Guardian Sentinel training program normally spans 7 centuries. You've compressed remarkably advanced techniques into 3 weeks. Some adjustment difficulty is expected. This qualified acknowledgement of his progress was the closest thing to praise Goku had received from the stern temporal warrior. Before he could respond, a disturbing sensation rippled through his body, his right arm briefly desynchronizing from his temporal field, appearing as it had in childhood while the rest of him remained adult. Serafina noticed immediately, your temporal coherence is destabilizing again. Show me. Reluctantly, Goku removed the training uniform's upper section. His torso revealed the physical consequences of channeling powers beyond mortal capacity. Patterns of luminescent energy had become visible beneath his skin, following the pathways of major meridians but occasionally pulsing with unsettling irregularity. Near his heart, the patterns formed a complex geometric configuration that briefly shifted between different temporal states. The chronon saturation is still increasing, Serafina observed clinically. Though concern edged her voice. How frequently are the desynchronization episodes occurring? 3 or 4 times daily, Goku admitted. Usually just momentary flickers, but last night, my entire left side existed about 3 seconds behind my right for almost a minute. Kiyomi's stabilization device helps, but your cellular structure is continuity. To adapt to temporal energy integration, a new voice completed his thought. Kiyomi entered the training chamber, multiple holographic displays hovering around her as always. Which is precisely what we need to discuss. She adjusted her glasses, studying the energy patterns across Goku's body with scientific fascination. Your most recent cellular samples show unprecedented chronon absorption rates. Your body isn't just containing the temporal energy, it's integrating it at a fundamental level. Is that good? Goku asked cautiously. Fascinating. Certainly, Kiyomi responded, circling H. I am to examine the patterns from all angles. Theoretically impossible, definitely. Potentially catastrophic, possibly. Beneficial long-term, unknown. She paused, realizing her analysis wasn't particularly reassuring. What I mean is, you're evolving into something we don't fully understand yet. The Emperor manifestation was never intended for a mortal vessel, Serafina added. Previous candida, Tays underwent centuries of physiological preparation. Yes, but that's what makes this case so extraordinary. Kiyomi enthused, scientific excitement overriding concern. His Saiyan physiology, Kombi. Ned with his history of divine ki integration and multiple resurrections across dimensional boundaries, has created a unique cellular structure capable of adapting to temporal energy. With each exposure, his body reconfigures to accommodate increased capacity. She manipulated one of her displays, expanding a 3-dimensional model of Goku's cellular structure. See these mitochondrial modifications. His cells are developing chronon processing capabilities similar to those in Chronoa's divine form, but through a completely different evolutionary pathway. That sounds impressive, Goku acknowledged. But it feels like my body's fighting itself half the time. Like parts of me are trying to exist in different moments simultaneously. Because they are, Kiyomi confirmed. Your physical form is oscillating between temporal states as it adapts. The desynchronization episodes should theoretically decrease as integration progresses, assuming you survive the transition period. Assuming? Goku questioned. Kiyomi winced slightly at her own tactlessness. Well, there's approximately a 27% chance your temporal coherence could destabilize completely during a major fluctuation event, essentially scattering your consciousness across multiple time streams. Which means, Goku pressed, existence without physicality, Serafina explained bluntly. Awareness without form, eternal consciousness with no means of interaction. That sounds unpleasant, Goku understated, pulling his training garment back on. But if it's the risk we need to take to stop these timeline collapses, I can handle it. A shimmer of respect passed through Serafina's usually impassive expression before she turned to Kiyomi. You mentioned an urgent matter. Yes. Kiyomi's attention snapped back to her primary purpose. Chronoa has received formal communication from 17 major timeline clusters. They're demanding audience with the new emperor immediately. Goku's expression shifted to one of genuine alarm, far more concerned about diplomatic responsibilities than risks to his physical existence. Political meetings. Can't Chronoa handle those? I'm still figuring out the temporal combat techniques. Under normal circumstances, yes, Kiyomi explained. But word of a new time emperor has spread across connected realities. These representatives want to personally assess whether you're a solution to the crisis or merely its newest symptom. They question his authority, Serafina asked sharply, her hand instinctively moving to her temporal blade. They question everything, Kiyomi responded with a nervous adjustment of her glasses. After witnessing multiple timeline collapses, their trust in traditional temporal governance is strained. Chronoa believes your direct involvement is necessary to prevent potential coalition fragmentation. Goku sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'm really not good at formal meetings. Fighting universe-threatening villains, sure. Political negotiations, not exactly my specialty, which is precisely why Chronoa has requested your presence in the preparation chamber immediately, Kiyomi added. She wants to brief you on NTIAL diplomatic protocols before the summit begins. As they exited the training area, Goku experienced another temporal fluctuation. This time his entire perception briefly accelerated, causing Kiyomi and Serafina to appear frozen in mid-step for several subjective seconds before reality synchronized again. That's new, he muttered, blinking away the disorienting after effect. Your temporal perception is evolving, Serafina noted with professional interest. Subjective time acceleration without conscious initiation. Just what I needed. More unpredictable abilities, Goku remarked with resigned humor. They traversed the impossible architecture of the Eternity Nexus, hallways that connected non-adjacent spaces, stairways that sometimes led upward and downward simultaneously, and chambers that reconfigured themselves based on current temporal needs. After 3 weeks, Goku had mostly adapted to the disorienting spatial properties, though occasional shifts still caught him by surprise. The preparation chamber materialized before them, quite literally, as the crystalline corridor restructured itself to form an ornate doorway where blank wall had existed moments before. Inside, Oa stood before multiple floating displays showing diverse beings from across the temporal spectrum. Her formal attire today emphasized her role as goddess of eternity, flowing crystalline robes that shifted between states of matter with each movement, and a circlet crown that seemed to contain galaxies in miniature. Ah, good, you're here, she acknowledged without turning, dismissing the displays with a graceful gesture. When she faced them, Goku noticed subtle signs of strain beneath her ageless appearance, evidence that the ongoing temporal crisis was taxing even her divine capabilities. Political summit, Goku stated unenthusiastically. Kiyomi mentioned 17 different timeline representatives. 23, actually, Chronoa corrected. Word of your successful stabilization efforts has spread. Additional clusters have joined the coalition seeking audience. She approached Goku, assessing him with critical attention to detail. With a subtle wave of her hand, his training at Tyre transformed into formal regalia befitting the Emperor of Time. Crystalline armor over flowing robes that shifted between midnight blue and cosmic black, emblazoned with geometric patterns representing the flow of temporal energy. A circlet similar to her own materialized on his head, though he immediately reached up to adjust it with discomfort. "Is this really necessary?" he asked, rolling his shoulders against the unfamiliar weight of ceremonial attire. "Appearance matters in temporal politics," Cronoa explained patiently. "Many of these representatives come from cultures where symbolic authority is as important as actual power. The regalia represents your position in the cosmic hierarchy." Goku's expression remained dubious, but he refrained from further complaint. "What exactly am I supposed to say to them?" "Ideally, very little," Cronoa answered frankly. "Traditional protocol dictates that I will handle most formal interactions while you provide symbolic presence and occasional ceremonial acknowledgments." She gestured to a crystalline pedestal where a complex sequence of formal phrases appeared in glowing script. "These are the traditional responses to various diplomatic overtures. We'll begin with the acknowledgement of temporal sovereignty, followed by the affirmation of multilateral causality, then proceed to the—" "I won't remember all this," Goku interrupted with characteristic bluntness. "Can't I just talk to them normally? Find out what they're worried about and tell them what we're doing about it?" Kiyomi's eyes widened in alarm. "That would violate at least 27 major protocols and potentially offend delegates from time traditional realities like the Axiom Concordance." Cronoa's expression, however, turned thoughtful. "Actually, an unconventional approach might be advantageous in current circumstances. Traditional temporal diplomacy hasn't prevented the current crisis. Perhaps fresh perspective is warranted." Before further discussion could occur, the chamber resonated with a distinctive harmonic tone, musical yet somehow mathematical in its precision. A stellar arrival sequence, Serafina identified, immediately moving to a guard position beside the main entrance. Unscheduled and unauthorized, Cronoa noted with concern. Kiyomi, the temporal scientist, was already accessing security protocols through her displays. Dimensio. Null breach in progress at the celestial docking nexus. Energy signature is unusual. Coherent but non-standard patterning. She blinked in surprise. It's reconfiguring our defensive algorithms as it interfaces with them. That should be impossible without administrative access. Cronoa's expression shifted to one of recognition. "Ah, it appears our guest list has expanded further. Divert the arrival notification to the grand reception hall and prepare for a cartographer diplomatic entourage." "Cartographer?" Goku questioned as they moved swiftly through the shifting corridors. "The celestial cartographers," Cronoa explained. "An ancient race that mapped the original pathways between dimensions. They rarely involve themselves in temporal governance matters. Their presence now is significant." They arrived at an immense chamber with vaulted ceilings that appeared to open directly into deep space, though the stars formed unfamiliar constellations that shifted in subtle patterns. At the room's center, reality itself was folding inward, not tearing as with previous breaches, but elegantly reconfiguring like an intricate origami pattern collapsing and expanding simultaneously. The dimensional manipulation concluded with mathematical precision, resolving into what appeared at first glance to be a living constellation. Closer inspection revealed it was a vessel of some kind, OSED of crystalline material that captured and reflected starlight in carefully calculated patterns. The ship, if such a conventional term applied, appeared both solidly physical and partially conceptual, as if manifesting an idea of transportation rather than merely a vessel. A section of the crystalline structure liquefied, flowing downward to form an elegant pathway. From this emerged a being who, appearance immediately commanded attention. Humanoid in general form but clearly not human, she stood taller than Goku by nearly a foot, with proportions suggesting both grace and strength. Her skin was her most striking feature, a deep midnight blue that literally reflected starlight, with constellations visible across its surface that shifted with her movements. Her hair, if it could be called that, resembled a cascade of silver energy that moved with fluid grace despite the absence of wind. Most unsettling were her eyes, entirely white with no visible pupils, yet clearly perceiving everything. Rather than reflecting light, they seemed to absorb it completely. She wore attire that appeared ceremonial yet functional, crystalline components over a material that resembled solidified cosmic energy, all flowing together in harmonious design. Goddess Chronoa, she greeted in a voice that carried musical undertones, each word accompanied by harmonic resonances that conveyed additional meaning beyond the verbal content. Approximately 7,422 temporal cycles have elapsed since our last direct communication. Ambassador Alara, Chronoa acknowledged formally. The Eternity Nexus acknowledges the Cartographer Collective's rite of passage and extends welcome according to the ancient accords. Alara's starlit gaze shifted to Goku, studying him with analytical intensity. So the rumors echoing across the dimensional pathways are substantiated. You have indeed installed a new Time Emperor. Her head tilted slightly, constellations shifting across her skin as she processed information. Irregular implementation protocol, non-standard candidate selection, unprecedented energy signature, emergency circumstances required adaptive measures, Chronoa replied diplomatically. Indeed, Alara responded, her tone neutral yet somehow conveying multiple layers of potential meaning. The Cartographer Collective has observed significant disruptions in established dimensional pathways. 17 major transit routes have collapsed completely. 43 others show critical degradation patterns. She gestured gracefully, manifesting a three-dimensio null stellar map between her hands, a complex network of glowing lines connecting countless points of light, many of which pulsed with warning colors or had disappeared entirely. I bring this navigational data as offering, she stated formally, directing the floating map toward Goku rather than Chronoa, a significant protocol deviation that caused Serafina to tense visibly. The collective has identified remaining stable passages between fracturing timelines. This information may prove useful in your stabilization efforts. Goku stepped forward, instinctively accepting the map though unsure of proper diplomatic response. Thank you, he said simply. This looks like it could help save a lot of lives. Alara's expression remained difficult to read, but something resembling surprise flickered across her features at his direct response. The Emperor speaks plainly, she observed. Interesting approach. Efficiency over ceremony. The collective will note this characteristic. Behind Alara's Everil Jr. cartographers emerged from the vessel, similar in appearance but with less pronounced features and simpler attire. They began unloading additional crystalline equipment and data storage devices. We request temporary accommodation within the Nexus, Alara stated. The collective wishes to establish an observation post to monitor dimensional stability during this crisis period. Of course, Chronoa agreed. The Celestial Observatory is at your disposal, as per traditional arrangement. Acceptable, Alara acknowledged with a slight bow. As her subordinates continued their work, she returned her attention to Goku. If it pleases the Emperor, I would discuss certain observational anomalies in private before the full diplomatic summit commences. Chronoa interceded smoothly, quote, perhaps after the Emperor has completed his preparation for the impending summit. Temporal protocols require. Actually, Goku interrupted, his instincts suggesting the cartographer's information might be important. I'd like to hear what Ambassador Alara has to say now. He glanced apologetically at Chronoa. Those protocol lessons can wait a bit, right? Chronoa's expression tightened almost perceptibly before she nodded with practiced grace. As you wish, Emperor. Serafina will accompany you, of course. Of course, Goku agreed, having grown accustomed to the Guardian Sentinel's constant protective presence. Alara led them through a side passage that reconfigured itself to create a small observatory chamber, a space with crystalline walls that became transparent to reveal the dimensional boundaries beyond the Nexus. Stellar constellations and temporal flow patterns became visible, creating a breathtaking cosmic panorama. Once assured of privacy, Alara's formal demeanor subtly shifted. You are not what the collective anticipated, she stated, studying Goku with those unsettling pupilless eyes. Your energy pattern defies established classification parameters. Even now, your cellular structure is actively reorganizing to integrate temporal power that should destroy mortal form instantly. Is that why you wanted to talk to me? To study how I'm changing? Goku asked directly. Partially, Alara acknowledged. The Cartographer Collective maintains the most comprehensive dimensional transit database in existence. Yet your specific energy configuration is without precedent or parallel. She gestured toward the cosmic display surrounding them. But my primary purpose concerns these The view shifted to highlight several specific regions where reality itself appeared to be unraveling. These temporal decay patterns are not random. They follow mathematical progressions suggesting deliberate causation. Serafina stepped forward, her professional interest overriding her guardian role. You imply intentional timeline destruction. The probability approaches certainty, Alara confirmed. These collapse vectors originate from coordinates beyond conventional dimensional mapping. Something, or someone, is systematically targeting structural linchpins in the temporal architecture. I felt something like that during the last stabilization attempt, Goku recalled. Ikai was fighting against another consciousness, not just fixing natural damage. Alara nodded, constellations shifting across her skin with the movement. Your intuitive assessment aligns with our mathematical projections. She hesitated briefly before continuing. The collective has authorized me to share certain protected navigation charts, specifically, stable passage routes to regions outside normal temporal jurisdiction. Her hands moved in complex patterns, manipulating the cosmic display to reveal additional dimensional layers normally hidden from perception. New pathways appeared, connecting to regions that seemed to exist in the conceptual spaces between established realities. These routes may prove essential if intervention becomes necessary beyond conventional timeline boundaries, she explained. The information is classified as constellation-level restricted. Its provision to non-cartographer entities violates 14 major collective protocols. Why risk breaking your rules to help us? Goku asked, sensing deeper motivation behind the offer. Alara's expression remained difficult to read, but her voice carried subtle emotional undertones despite its measured delivery. The collective exists to map and preserve dimensional pathways. If timeline collapses continue at current acceleration rates, there will be nothing left to map. Self-preservation necessitates adaptive protocol interpretation. Serafina studied the displayed pathways with professional assessment. These routes could provide tactical advantage if direct confrontation with the source becomes necessary. Precisely, Alara agreed, though I must emphasize their temporary nature. Reality fractures continue to propagate unpredictably. Even these protected passages may collapse without warning. Thank you for sharing this. Goku said earnestly. This kind of information could make the difference if we need to take the fight to whoever's causing these collapses. Something indefinable flickered across Alara's features, perhaps surprise at his straightforward gratitude or confusion at the lack of expected formal acknowledgement. Before she could respond, a familiar quantum distortion appeared near the chamber entrance. Mitsuko's form coalesced from probability waves, her quantum state momentarily unstable before settling into more coherent physicality. Her appearance had changed some. Since their first encounter, her quantum fluctuations now appeared more controlled, and the chaotic energy patterns of her suit had resolved into more ordered configurations. Interrupting diplomatic pleasantries, she observed with characteristic sharpness. How unfortunate, but perhaps prioritizing actual crisis response over ceremonial exchanges is warranted given our circumstances. Alara turned toward the quantum entity, her expression cooling noticeably. Void Walker, your presence was not anticipated in this discussion. Cartographer, Mitsuko acknowledged with equal frost. Still arting paths while ignoring what travels them, I see. The tension between them was immediately palpable. Goku stepped forward, instinctively mediating. Mitsuko, have you found something important? Her attention shifted to him. Quantum fluctuations momentarily increasing with emotional intensity before stabilizing again. Yes. Actually, while everyone's been preparing for political theater, I've been investigating collapse patterns across the quantum substrate. She gestured, creating a display of her own, a three-dimensional visualization of quantum probability waves where timeline fractures appeared as distinctive disruption patterns. The collapses aren't random or even simply targeted. They follow a specific sequence, a signature I've encountered before. When your timeline was destroyed, Goku surmised. Mitsuko nodded, her normally caustic expression sobering. Identical pattern, larger scale. Whatever entity erased my reality is now implementing the same process across multiple dimensional clusters simultaneously. Alara studied the quantum display with scientific interest, her earlier hostility temporarily set aside. This probability pattern correlates with anomalies in our cartographic data. The mathematical harmony suggests single-source causation. In plain language, Mitsuko translated with characteristic impatience. We're dealing with one extremely powerful entity. Not a natural phenomenon or multiple attackers. Do you know what this entity is? Serafina questioned, hand resting on her temporal blade. Mitsuko's expression darkened. Not specifically. But, during my existence in the void between realities, I encountered traces of something ancient, conceptual fragments suggesting an intelligence that predates current temporal architecture. We should ing this information to Chronoa immediately, Goku decided, his casual dismissal of diplomatic protocol causing Serafina to wince slightly. Indeed, Alara agreed, surprising the Guardian Sentinel her ready acceptance of the Emperor's informal directive. This correlation between quantum disruption patterns and cartographic anomalies warrants immediate analysis. As they prepared to return to the main chamber, Mitsuko moved closer to Goku, her voice lowering. Your temporal signature has evolved since our last interaction. The integration is progressing faster than the goddess predicted. Is that good or bad? Goku asked quietly. Depends on your perspective, Mitsuko responded, her form briefly flickering between quantum states. Accelerated integration increases your regulatory capability but also your dimensional displacement potential. Seeing his confusion, she clarified reluctantly. You're becoming more powerful, but also less anchored to conventional existence. Similar to my condition, but through different causation. Is that why you're being slightly less hostile toward me? Goku asked with unexpected perceptiveness. Mitsuko's quantum fluctuations intensified momentarily, her equivalent of an emotional reaction. Perhaps I recognize kindred existential displacement. She immediately reverted to her caustic tone. Or perhaps I'm simply prioritizing multiversal preservation over personal grievances. Don't mistake pragmatism for affinity, Emperor. Despite her sharp words, Goku sensed the subtle shift in her attitude, not friendship certainly, but perhaps the beginning of reluctant alliance. Before he could respond, another temporal fluctuation rippled through him. This time, his entire body briefly desynchronized, appearing to occupy slightly different positions simultaneously before realigning with a disorienting snap. Your condition is deteriorating more rapidly than you've disclosed, Alara observed with scientific precision. Kiyomi is monitoring it, Goku replied dismissively. We have more important concerns right now. Your temporal coherence is directly relevant to those concerns, Serafina countered firmly. If you destabilize completely during a critical intervention, the consequences could exceed current crisis parameters. I'm fine, Goku insisted as they rejoined the main procession heading toward the Grand Council chamber. The assembled representatives from across the temporal spectrum were gathering, beings ranging from humanoid to completely conceptual, some appearing physical while others manifested as pure energy UCTS or mathematical pattern configurations. Chronoa awaited them on a raised platform, her divine presence commanding attention despite her relatively modest physical stature. She beckoned Goku to Joe. In her at the ceremonial position reserved for temporal authority figures. The delegates are assembled, she informed him quietly. We will begin with traditional acknowledgements, followed by status reports from each major timeline cluster. I will handle the formal responses according to established protocol. Goku nodded, trying to project confidence despite his discomfort with ceremonial proceedings. As he took his position beside Chronoa, the assembled representatives fell into expectant silence. The ceremony began with Chronoa's formal invocation, a complex recitation in an ancient language that caused the crystalline chamber to resonate sympathetically, creating harmonic patterns that rippled through the temporal fabric itself. Following established protocol, she then introduced each delegation in order of temporal seniority, some lineages extending back to the earliest formation of current reality structures. Goku maintained the dignified posture Serafina had drilled into him during their training sessions. Though his attention occasionally wandered during particularly lengthy ceremonial exchanges, the formal atmosphere shifted abruptly when a delegate from what Chronoa had identified as the Quantum Confluence Collective interrupted the proceedings. With respect to established protocol, the delegate began, their form shifting between multiple probability states similar to Mitsuko's but with more stability. We face unprecedented temporal dissolution. Perhaps we might dispense with ceremonial recitations and address substantive crisis response measures. Several delegates registered shock at this procedural violation, while others signaled clear agreement with the sentiment. Chronoa prepared to invoke appropriate diplomatic measures to restore order, but Goku spoke before she could intervene. "I think that's a good idea," he stated simply, his voice carrying unexpected authority despite its casual delivery. "You've all experienced timeline fractures in your home realities. You've lost people, places, entire branches of possibility. You deserve to know what we're doing about it and how we plan to fix this." The chamber fell into stunned silence at this dramatic departure from protocol. Chronoa maintained perfect composure despite the procedural derailment, though Serafina's slight wince conveyed her displeasure with the protocol violation. "As the Emperor suggests," Chronoa smoothly pivoted, "perhaps direct communication would better serve current circumstances." A representative from the Axiom Concordance, a being composed of geometric light RNS arranged in rigid symmetry, moved forward. The Concordance questions the legitimacy of this unconventional Emperor's authority. Traditional ascension protocols require 7 celestial cycles of preparation and formal endorsement from all major temporal councils. "Your timeline was 67% erased last week," Goku responded bluntly. "Would you rather we had waited for proper cement while more realities disappeared?" The Axiom representative's patterns fluctuated with what might have been indignation, but they offered no immediate counter-argument. A delegate from the Organic Continuum, a collective consciousness representing billions of biological entities across interconnected timelines, manifested next. Their physical form resembled a humanoid composed of constantly shifting cellular structures. "The continuum acknowledges emergency measures may be necessary," they stated, voice resonating from multiple points within their fluid form. "But we require specifics. Progress has been made in identifying the collapse cause. What countermeasures have been implemented? What success probability can we anticipate?" Rather than deferring to Chronoa, Goku addressed the questions directly. "We've identified patterns suggesting deliberate attacks rather than natural temporal decay. Our scientists and specialists," he gestured toward Kiyomi, Mitsuko, and Alara, they detected signatures pointing to a single entity operating from outside conventional temporal boundaries. He continued with surprising clarity given the technical complexity of the situation. "So far, we've successfully stabilized 23 critical timeline junctures, but we're still developing more permanent countermeasures. As for success probability," he glanced briefly at Chronoa before answering honestly. "I don't know exact numbers. What I do know is that giving up isn't an option. Every timeline, every reality, every life matters, and we'll keep fighting until we find a way to stop these collapses permanently." The chamber remained silent following his unorthodox but undeniably sincere response. Chronoa observed the delegates' reactions with careful attention, noting the subtle shift in their collective energy from skepticism toward cautious consideration. A representative from the Temporal Archivists Guild, appearing as an elderly humanoid with skin like parchment covered in constantly shifting text, spoke next. "The archives record 17 previous multiversal restructuring events across deep temporal history. In each case, stabilization required sacrifice of peripheral timeline clusters to preserve core reality structures. The implication was clear, suggesting that certain realities should be abandoned to preserve others." Goku's expression hardened perceptibly. "That won't be our approach," he stated with quiet but unmistakable determination. "Every timeline deserves protection, not just the ones deemed important by some cosmic ranking system." A commendable sentiment, the archivist responded neutrally, but perhaps impractical given resource limitations and acceleration rates of current collapses. "Then we'll find a way to expand our resources," Goku countered. "That's why you're all here, isn't it? Not just to assess our progress, but to contribute your knowledge and abilities toward a solution that preserves all remaining realities." This reframing of the summit's purpose, from assessment to collaborative problem solving, caught many delegates by surprise. Several exchanged meaningful glances or equivalent communication signals, reassessing their approach to the proceedings. A delegate from the Probability Engineers Consortium, a being composed of constantly calculating mathematical equations given semi-physical form, moved forward next. "Your stabilization methods. Explain technical specifications and implementation protocols." Kiyomi stepped forward at Goku's encouraging nod, her scientific expertise clearly relevant to the question. Our approach combines conventional temporal reinforcement algorithms with the Emperor's unique energy signature, which creates resonance patterns counter to the collapse frequencies. She elaborated with growing enthusiasm, forgetting her usual social awkwardness as she delved into technical details. The Emperor's cellular structure generates Cronin harmonics in the exact inverse pattern to the decay sequence, essentially providing a stabilizing counterweight to the dissolution process. We're currently developing amplification technology to extend this effect across wider temporal regions simultaneously. The technical explanation continued with increasing complexity until Goku gently interrupted with a simplified summary. Basically, my energy naturally counters whatever's causing the collapses. We're working on ways to make that protection cover more timelines at once. This blend of technical expertise and accessible explanation appeared to satisfy most delegates, though some clearly remained skeptical. The discussions continued for several hours, with representatives raising specific concerns about their home realities and questioning various aspects of the stabilization strategy. Throughout the proceedings, Goku maintained his direct, honest approach, acknowledging limitations while emphasizing commitment to finding solutions. Though far from traditional diplomatic methodology, his sincerity gradually won over many initially hostile delegates. As the formal summit session concluded, Cronoa initiated the traditional recess period before private negotiations would begin. The delegates dispersed to assigned contemplation chambers, leaving the core team momentarily alone. Well, Cronoa observed with measured tone, that was perhaps the most unconventional diplomat I see summit in 17 billion years of temporal governance. Did I mess up the protocols too badly? Goku asked, removing the uncomfortable ceremonial circlet with evident relief. To his surprise, Hironoa's expression held something resembling approval. Actually, your approach proved unexpectedly effective. Several delegations that arrived with aggressive positioning have moderated their stances considerably. The Emperor's authenticity resonates across cultural barriers, Alara observed analytically. A noteworthy diplomatic attribute, though unorthodox in application. You mean people can tell I'm being honest? Goku translated with a slight smile. Indeed, Cronoa confirmed, though we should prepare more thoroughly for the individual negotiations to follow. Several delegations WILL likely offer conditional support in exchange for prioritized timeline protection. They want me to choose which realities to save first, Goku surmised, his expression sobering. A traditional ECT of temporal triage during crisis periods, Serafina confirmed. Resource allocation necessitates prioritization. I don't accept that, Goku stated firmly. There has to be a way to protect everyone. A worthy aspiration, Cronoa acknowledged, but practically challenging given current limitations. Before further discussion could develop, Serafina suddenly tensed, her hand moving to her weapon. Security breach, she announced, eyes narrowing as she focused on something beyond normal perception. What is it? Goku questioned, immediately alert. Temporal signatures approaching through restricted vectors. Serafina elaborated, drawing one of her blades. 9 entities utilizing non-standard transit methods to bypass Nexus security protocols. Kiyomi accessed security systems through her displays. Expression alarmed. Confirmed intrusion. Unknown entities materializing in sectors 3, 5, and 7 simultaneously. The delegates, Cronoa realized with concern. They're vulnerable during meditation periods with reduced security presence. Coordinate defense response, Serafina ordered crisply, already moving toward the nearest intrusion point. Kiyomi, initiate containment protocols. Mitsuko, your quantum perception could identify attackers using probability shifting. Don't order me around, Guardian, Mitsuko retorted, though she was already shifting toward her quantum state in preparation. I'll check the main delegation chambers, Goku decided, instinctively taking command despite his limited experience with Nexus security systems. I'll accompany you, Cronoa stated, her formal diplomatic demeanor shifting toward battle readiness. The primary delegates are highest priority targets. They separated swiftly, moving through the crystalline corridors with urgent purpose. Goku and Cronoa headed toward the central meditation chambers where most important delegates had withdrawn for the recess period. As they approached, a distortion AP paired in the corridor before them, reality rippling like heat waves before tearing open to reveal a swirling vortex of negative space. From this breach emerged three figures whose very appearance seemed wrong. Beings composed of entropic energy patterns that actively degraded surrounding temporal structures. Their forms were humanoid but unstable, with features that shifted between definition and dissolution. Most disturbing were their eyes, or rather the absence where eyes should be, revealing only empty voids that seemed to absorb light and hope simultaneously. Entropy Collective, Chronoa identified grimly. Nihilistic extremists who believe total temporal collapse is preferable to continued existence. Why would anyone want to destroy everything? Goku questioned, settling into a combat stance. They come from dying timelines, Chronoa explained as the entities advanced methodically. Realities so degraded by entropy that suffering became their dominant experience. They seek to accelerate universal heat death, believing non-existence is preferable to prolonged cosmic agony. The entropic entities attacked without warning or declaration, extending limbs that elongated impossibly, transforming into weapons composed of pure dissolution energy. Their movements contained disturbing grace, suggesting former humanity corrupted into something unnatural. Goku dodged the initial assault, analyzing their attack patterns with experienced combat instinct. These weren't mindless destroyers but coordinated assassins with specific tactical approach. He countered with precisely controlled energy bursts, careful to avoid damaging the Nexus's sensitive temporal architecture. Conventional energy attacks will have limited effect, Chronoa warned, manifesting temporal shields to deflect entropic discharges. Their composition exists partially outside normal causal patterns. Adapting quickly, Goku integrated Seraphina's training into his response, focusing not merely on physical combat but temporal manipulation. He accelerated his personal time flow, causing the attackers to appear momentarily slowed, then targeted the temporal discrepancies in their forms rather than their physical manifestations. The approach proved effective. His temporally charged strikes disrupted their unstable existence patterns, forcing them to temporarily solidify into more vulnerable states. One attacker disintegrated under this pressure, collapsing into cascading entropic particles that dissolved into nothingness. The remaining two adjusted their tactics, merging into a single larger entity with increased power but reduced mobility. This combined form launched concentrated entropic blasts, beams of negative existence that didn't merely damage but actively erased portions of reality they contacted. Goku narrowly avoided a direct hit. Though the near miss caused a momentary desynchronization in his left arm, the limb briefly existing out of phase with the rest of his body. The disorientation almost left him vulnerable to a follow-up attack, but Chronoa intervened with precise temporal manipulation, creating a localized stasis field that temporarily froze the entropic entity. The effect won't last long, she warned. Their entropic nature actively counters temporal stasis. Seizing the opportunity, Goku concentrated his energy into a modified attack, combining key manipulation with his developing temporal abilities. The resulting technique manifested as a sphere of concentrated temporal energy that he thrust directly into the entropic entity's core. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The sphere expanded within the creature, forcing temporal regularity upon its entropic structure. The fundamental contradiction between ordered time and entropic dissolution created cascading failure throughout its form. With a silent implosion, the entity collapsed into itself, leaving only a momentary distortion that quickly faded. Impressive adaptation, Chronoa acknowledged as they continued toward the delegation chambers. You integrated conventional combat techniques with temporal manipulation more effectively than most Guardian trainees achieve in decades. Fighting's always been my best skill, Goku replied modestly. The principles aren't that different, just new energy types and effects to work with. They reached the main delegation chamber to find several representatives already engaged in defensive measures against additional entropy collective attackers. The Axiom Concordance delegate had erected geometric barrier patterns that temporarily blocked entropic degradation, while the Organic Continuum representative had divided into multiple smaller forms to evacuate less combat-capable delegates. With practiced efficiency, Goku and Chronoa joined the defense, their complementary abilities creating effective containment of the assassination attempt. Within minutes, the remaining attackers had been neutralized or forced to retreat through hastily created entropy portals. Is everyone all right? Goku asked, surveying the chamber for injured delegates. The crystalline harmonics representative sustained partial entropic degradation, reported the archivist delegate, indicating a being composed of geometric crystal formations now showing significant damage to its structured pattern. Temporal regeneration may be possible but requires immediate specialized intervention. Without hesitation, Chronoa moved to the injured delegate, her hands glowing with restorative temporal energy as she began the delicate process of reversing entropic damage. The other representatives observed with various expressions of concern, appreciation, or clinical interest depending on their nature. The Emperor's combat effectiveness exceeds preliminary assessment parameters, noted the probability engineer delegate. Mathematical equations flowing more rapidly across its form. Integration of temporal manipulation with conventional energy projection demonstrates adaptive capability relevant to current crisis response requirements. He fights well, translated the organic continuum representative more simply. This increases confidence in stabilization potential. A crystal line communication panel activated near Goku, displaying Serafina's image. Emperor, status report. Intrusion contained in sectors 3 and 5. Mitsuko is pursuing remaining hostiles through quantum substrata. Kiyomi reports attempted breach of primary security protocols but maintains system integrity. We've secured the delegation chamber, Goku responded. One injured representative receiving treatment from Chronoa. No other casualties. The attack pattern suggests specific targeting, Serafina observed. Assassination rather than general disruption. You appear to have been the primary objective, with delegate elimination as secondary goal. The Entropy Collective views your stabilization efforts as directly contradicting their philosophical position, Alara added, joining the communication channel. Your success threatens their objective of accelerated universal termination. They're trying to kill me because I'm preventing the end of everything. Goku summarized with a hint of incredulity. That's dedicated, I guess. Nihilistic extremism operates on fundamentally different values than preservation philosophies, Chronoa explained, completing her treatment of the injured delegate. To them, non-existence represents relief from cosmic suffering, a perspective developed in timelines where entropy had progressed beyond sustainable parameters. The diplomatic implications of the attack became immediately apparent as delegates regrouped. Their attitudes toward Goku noticeably shifted after witnessing his combat effectiveness and prioritization of their safety. Several representatives who had maintained skeptical positions now appeared more receptive to alliance. The axiom concordance acknowledges the Emperor's practical capability transcends procedural concerns, announced their geometric delegate. Patterns reconfiguring into more harmonious arrangements suggesting formal approval. We extend conditional support for continued stabilization efforts under current leadership. Similar declarations followed from other delegations, transforming what had begun as an assessment summit into an emerging coalition. The attack, while dangerous, had inadvertently demonstrated Goku's commitment and ability more effectively than formal diplomatic exchanges ever could. As security stabilized throughout the Nexus, the team regrouped in a private strategy chamber to assess the situation and implications. Mitsuko arrived last, her quantum form temporarily less stable after extended void tracking. The remaining attackers escaped through entropy channels beyond conventional tracking capability. She reported, frustration evident in her fluctuating state. However, I collected trace particles from their transit signatures. Analysis may reveal origin coordinates. Excellent work, Chronoa acknowledged. Kiyomi, can you process the temporal signatures? The scientist nodded, already creating analytical displays. Preliminary patterns suggest origination Fr. Own severely degraded timeline clusters near the multiversal boundary. Entropy progression approximately 97% complete in their home realities. No wonder they're nihilistic, Goku observed with unexpected empathy. They've watched everything they care about slowly die around them. Understanding their motivation doesn't justify their methods, Serafina stated firmly. Their actions threaten countless beings across all remaining timelines. True, Goku agreed, but it helps to know why they're fighting. They're not just mindless destroyers, they have reasons, even if those reasons are based on losing hope. This perspective, seeking to understand opponents rather than simply condemn them, seemed to surprise several team members, though Chronoa nodded with thoughtful agreement. The diplomatic outcome exceeds optimal projections despite the security breach, Alara observed, shifting conversation toward practical matters. 78% of delegate representatives have indicated support for continued Nexus authority under current leadership. They saw Goku in action, Mitsuko noted with reluctant admiration. Combat effectiveness tends to be more convincing than diplomatic rhetoric. Indeed, Chronoa agreed. The summit has achieved its primary objective, maintaining coalition stability during transition to new temporal governance. However, our fundamental crisis remains unaddressed. The timeline collapses continue despite our stabilization efforts. Kiyomi manipulated her displays, presenting updated analysis. Collapse patterns show brief decelerity, on following each stabilization intervention, but then resume at increased rates. It's as if something is actively countering our efforts, learning from each stabilization technique and developing specific countermeasures. An intelligence rather than natural entropy, Serafina surmised, her tactical mind immediately grasping the implications. We face an adaptive opponent. Which brings us to a difficult but necessary discussion. Chronoa stated, her expression becoming solemn. Kiyomi has completed analysis of Goku's cellular samples and temporal integration progress. I believe she has significant findings to share. All attention turned to the temporal scientist, who adjusted her glasses nervously before activating a detailed holographic display of Goku's cellular structure. The visualization showed his cells undergoing remarkable transformation. Chronon energy had integrated into his genetic material, creating entirely new cellular components that processed temporal energy in unprecedented ways. The Emperor's physical form continues adapting to temporal integration at accelerated rates, Kiyomi explained, highlighting specific cellular modifications. However, the process remains fundamentally unstable despite these adaptations. Current projections indicate 93% probability of catastrophic temporal destabilization within 14 to 17 days. Meaning what, exactly? Goku asked directly. Kiyomi hesitated, glancing at Chronoa before answering with clinical precision. Complete cellular chronon saturation resulting in temporal coherence failure. Essentially, your physical form would destabilize across multiple timestreams simultaneously. Consciousness potentially preserved but existence fragmented beyond practical functionality. Like what happened to me when my timeline collapsed. Mitsuko added quietly, quantum fluctuations increasing with emotional resonance. Aware but unable to fully exist in any single reality. A fractured state of being. Is there any way to prevent this? Goku questioned, his calm acceptance of potentially catastrophic personal consequences striking in its sincerity. Kiyomi and Chronoa exchanged meaningful glances before the goddess spoke. There is one possibility, though it involves significant risk and permanent consequences for both of us. She gestured, creating a visualization of the Chronos heart, a massive crystalline engine at the Nexus center that regulated temporal flow across connected realities. Your current method of accessing temporal energy is fundamentally unsustainable for a mortal vessel, regardless of your remarkable adaptability. However, a permanent connection to the Chronos heart would provide structured energy flow rather than raw chronon saturation. Such connection traditionally requires the sacred union ritual, Serafina added, her expression carefully neutral despite the significant implications. Sacred union, Goku repeated, recalling previous brief mention of the ceremony. A form of cosmic marriage, Chronoa explained directly. A binding of the Emperor of Time and the Goddess of Eternity into complementary regulatory forces. The ritual hasn't been performed since the early formation of the current cosmic cycle. The implications hung heavy in the chamber's atmosphere. Alara studied both Chronoa and Goku with scientific detachment, while Mitsuko's Quantum form fluctuated with unclear emotional response. Serafina maintained rigorous professional composure, though her grip on her weapon hilt tightened perceptibly. This binding, Goku sought to clarify, would stabilize my connection to temporal energy. Yes, Chronoa confirmed, my divine nature would serve as intermediary conduit between your consciousness and the raw temporal power, filtering and regulating the energy flow to prevent cellular degradation. But it's not just a technical solution, Kiyomi added with uncharacteristic gentleness. The sacred union creates permanent metaphysical connection between participants. Essentially, your consciousnesses would remain partially linked across all temporal states. A marriage in more than just name, Goku surmised, his expression thoughtful. Indeed, Chronoa acknowledged, Though unlike conventional mortal unions, the sacred union exists primarily on cosmic rather than personal terms. Its purpose is functional balance between masculine and feminine temporal energies to maintain multiversal stability. That sounds very practical, Goku observed with hint of humor despite the serious circumstances. A faint smile touched Chronoa's ageless features. The functional aspects predominate in formal descriptions, certainly. However, historical records indicate previous emperor-goddess pairings developed significant personal bonds over time. This is an option we should consider carefully but not rush toward, Serafina interjected professionally. Alternative stabilization methods may yet be developed. We have approximately immediately 2 weeks before critical destabilization becomes probable, Kiyomi reminded them. Research continues, but current alternative approaches show limited promise. Further discussion was interrupted by a massive temporal disturbance that shook the entire nexus structure. Crystalline surfaces briefly phased out of existence before reconstituting, and gravity fluctuated momentarily, causing objects to float before crashing down again. What was that? Goku demanded, instantly alert. Kiyomi was already accessing emergency systems, her expression shifting to alarm as data flooded her displays. Massive temporal breach in progress. Something enormous is attempting to cross dimensional boundaries directly into Nexus-adjacent space. They rushed to the observation chamber, where the cosmic view beyond the Nexus revealed a horrifying sight. Reality itself was tearing open. Not the controlled dimensional manipulation of Alara's arrival or even the entropic portals of the assassins, but violent, ragged breaches in the fabric of existence itself. Through these massive tears emerged an entity of nightmarish proportion. Its form defied conventional description, a writhing mass of temporal distortion that consumed light, matter, and time itself. Parts of its structure resembled organic components from countless different species fused together in impossible configurations, while other sections appeared mechanical or even conceptual, mathematical equations given physical form through temporal manipulation. Chrono Devourer. Chrono identified, genuine fear evident in her voice for the first time. An apex predator that consumes entire timeline clusters for sustenance. They normally cannot penetrate Nexus-protected regions. Current security protocols are failing against its dimensional breach methodology. Kiyomi reported urgently. Entity mass exceeds all previous recorded specimens by approximately 300%. The creature's approach sent cascading disruptions through nearby timestreams. On Kiyomi's displays, dozens of timeline threads began darkening simultaneously as the monster's presence alone degraded their structural integrity. We need to stop it before it reaches the Nexus proper, Goku stated, already moving toward the nearest exit point. If that thing gets to the Chrono's heart, conventional combat approaches will have minimal effect, Alara warned. Already calculating probable outcomes, Chrono Devourers exist partially outside normal causal sequences. Damage inflicted in present states may not affect their past or future configurations. Then we hit all their states simultaneously, Goku responded with characteristic adaptability. Mitsuko, can you perceive its quantum structure to identify vulnerable points across its temporal existence? The quantum woman's expression registered surprise at being consulted for strategic input. Theoretically, yes, its probability pattern should reveal structural consistencies across temporal states. Good. Kiyomi, can you modify the stabilization technology we've been developing to target those vulnerabilities specifically? The scientist nodded rapidly. Concentrated application rather than broad-spectrum effect. Yes, reconfiguring now. Alara, we'll need navigation through dimensional boundaries to attack from multiple vectors simultaneously. The cartographer inclined her head in acknowledgement. The star charts I provided include approach trajectories applicable to this scenario. I can calculate optimal intersection coordinates. Serafina, your guardian combat techniques will be essential for coordinated tactical response. The stern warrior nodded once, already drawing both temporal blades in preparation. Guardian battle protocols are designed for multi-dimensional engagement. And Chronoa, Goku turned to the goddess last, we'll need your divine authority to temporarily access emergency power levels from the Chrono's heart. Chronoa studied him with newfound appreciation. You transition to crisis command with remarkable natural ability for someone with no formal temporal authority training. Fighting impossible monsters to save reality. This part one actually have experience with. Goku responded with grim humor. Let's move. They mobilized with coordinated efficiency, each applying specialized knowledge toward the unified response. Kiyomi rapidly modified stabilization technology into weaponized configuration while Alara calculated precise dimensional coordinates for maximum tactical advantage. Mitsuko extended her quantum perception to analyze He Chrono Devourer's probability structure as Serafina prepared Guardian battle formations. Chronoa led Goku to a specialized chamber adjacent to the Chrono's heart, where emergency power access could be safely implemented. The room contained crystalline conduits designed to channel temporal energy directly to authorized users during crisis situations. This will temporarily increase your temporal energy capacity beyond current integration levels, she warned as she activated the ancient systems. The strain will accelerate your cellular deterioration, but may provide sufficient power to repel the Chrono Devourer. Worth the risk, Goku stated simply, positioning himself within the activation circle. Chronoa's hands moved in complex patterns, weaving temporal energy into precisely calibrated configurations. The crystalline conduits responded, glowing with increasing intensity as power flowed from the Chrono's heart into the specialized chamber. Focus your consciousness on maintaining coherent identity, Chronoa instructed as energy began pouring into Goku. The power influx will attempt to fragment your perception across multiple temporal states simultaneously. The process was immediately more intense than previous temporal energy exposures. Goku felt his consciousness expanding exponentially, awareness stretching across countless timestreams simultaneously while his physical form struggled to contain the massive power influx. His body flickered between temporal states more violently than before, occasionally becoming partially transparent as his matter temporarily phased into alternative dimensional frequencies. Through sheer willpower and disciplined focus developed through decades of martial training, Goku maintained his core identity despite the overwhelming expansion of perception. The energy stabilized within him, transforming his appearance subtly, his hair briefly shifting to silver white before returning to normal, though now containing strands that seemed to exist slightly out of phase with the rest. His eyes temporarily displayed the same shifting temporal patterns as Chronoa's before settling into their normal appearance with subtle luminous undertones. Remarkable integration efficiency, Chronoa observed with professional admiration. Your adaptive capability exceeds all historical precedent for non-divine entities. It feels different this time, Goku noted, examining his hands as temporal energy coursed visibly beneath his skin. More controlled somehow, like the power is working with me instead of fighting against my body. The emergency conduits provide structured rather than raw temporal energy, Chronoa explained. Similar to the effect the sacred union would create, though temporary and less stable. Their communication was interrupted by Kiyomi's urgent notification through the Nexus systems. Chrono Devourer has breached outer dimensional barriers, currently consuming timeline clusters in sectors 17 through 23. Estimated arrival at primary Nexus boundary in 7 minutes. We need to intercept it before it reaches the Nexus proper, Chronoa stated grimly. Once prepared, proceed to primary deployment chamber for coordinated response. They rejoined the others in a massive crystalline chamber equipped with dimensional transit technology. Kiyomi had modified several devices into weapon-specific ally calibrated to target the Chrono Devourer's temporal vulnerabilities. Alara had created navigational charts showing precise intercept trajectories, while Mitsuko's quantum analysis had identified structural weaknesses in the creature's probability pattern. The entity exists across 17 simultaneous temporal states, Mitsuko explained, displaying her findings. However, its quantum structure contains 3 consistent convergence points where all temporal variations intersect. Targeting these nexus points will affect all manifestations simultaneously. Standard deployment strategy WOU. LD position guardian units at each convergence point for synchronized attack, Serafina noted. But we lack sufficient personnel for traditional formation. Then we adapt, Goku responded. Each of us will take responsibility for a different approach vector. Mitsuko's quantum state allows her to potentially exist at multiple points simultaneously. Alara's navigational precision ensures optimal positioning. Kiyomi's modified weapons provide necessary impact force. Serafina's guardian techniques maintain tactical coordination. Chronoa's divine authority stabilizes the overall temporal field. And you? Chronoa questioned, though her tone suggested she already anticipated his answer. I'll engage the primary manifestation directly, Goku stated. My increased temporal energy should draw its attention, creating opportunity for coordinated strikes against its vulnerability points. The strategy was unorthodox but leveraged each individual's unique capabilities effectively. After brief refinement of tactical details, they prepared for dimensional deployment. Kiyomi distributed modified stabilization devices reconfigured as temporal disruptors, while Alara provided precise navigation L coordinates for their approach vectors. Chrono Devourer now 3 minutes from primary nexus boundary, Kiyomi reported tensely. Dimensional transit calibrated for synchronized arrival at designated intercept coordinates. Remember, Goku addressed the team, this entity exists across multiple temporal states simultaneously. What you see is only one aspect of its existence. Focus on your Daisy G-nated vulnerability point regardless of its apparent form in your local manifestation. Deployment sequence initiating, Chronoa announced formally. May the eternal flow guide our efforts. The dimensional transit activated, separating the team across carefully calculated vectors. Goku found himself emerging directly in the creature's primary approach path, facing the full horror of its impossible form. From this perspective, the Chrono Devourer appeared as a mountainous abomination composed of contradictory biological and mechanical components fused together by temporal distortion. Its surface constantly reconfigured as past, present, and future states overlapped chaotically. Multiple sensory organs from countless different species studded its undulating mass, while crystalline structure. Resembling corrupted versions of the Chrono's heart pulsed with sickly energy at irregular intervals. Most disturbing was its method of consumption. Massive apertures opened across its surface, drawing in not merely physical matter but time itself from surrounding realities. Timeline threads visibly stretched toward these temporal whirlpools before snapping and being devoured, each representing billions of lives and countless potential futures erased from existence. Goku manifested his full temporal energy field, the power granted by Chronoa's emergency procedure creating an aura of controlled Chronon energy that rippled with regulated patterns rather than chaotic fluctuations. The display immediately attracted the Chrono Devourer's attention, countless sensory organs swiveling to focus on this unexpected power source. That's right, Goku murmured. Focus on me, not the others. The creature altered course, massive form undulating toward this promising new energy source. Goku maintained position, allowing the monster to approach while carefully monitoring team communications through the temporal link Chronoa had established. Vector Alpha in position, came Serafina's disciplined report. Vulnerability point identified but heavily shielded by temporal distortion field. Vector Beta aligned, Alara's precise tones followed. Calculating optimal Chronon disruption frequency for penetration of defensive barriers. Vector Gamma fluctuating but stabilized, Mitsuko added, her voice echoing slightly through quantum distortion. Maintaining probability lock on convergence point despite temporal interference. Stabilization technology recalibrated to current entity configuration, Kiyomi confirmed. Temporal disruptors charged to maximum capacity. Divine authority established across all vectors. Chronoa completed the sequence, awaiting primary engagement to initiate synchronized strike. The Chrono Devourer accelerated toward Goku, its impossible mass creating gravitational distortions that warped surrounding space-time. He remained stationary, gathering temporal energy into concentrated form similar to his familiar ki techniques but fundamentally different in composition and effect. As the creature came within optimal range, Goku unleashed his attack, not a destructive blast but a precisely calibrated disruption wave that temporarily standardized the monster's chaotic temporal fluctuations, forcing its multiple temporal states into momentary synchronization. Now, he commanded through the temporal link. Across multiple vectors, the team struck simultaneously, each targeting their designated vulnerability point with specialized approaches. Serafina's guardian blades sliced through temporarily stabilized temporal barriers to reach the first convergence nexus. Alara's cartographic precision guided Kiyomi's modified disruptor directly into the second vulnerability point, while Mitsuko's quantum state allowed her to phase through defensive measures to reach the third critical junction. Chronoa's divine authority maintained the synchronized temporal field that prevented the creature from desynchronizing its existence across different timestreams to evade the coordinated attack. The combined effect created a cascading disruption throughout the Chrono Devourer's entire multidimensional structure. The monster's response was immediate and terrifying. A reality-distorting roar that transcended conventional sound, manifesting instead as fundamental disruption of causal patterns across all nearby dimensional boundaries. Its massive form contorted in ways that violated physical laws, portions collapsing inward while others expanded beyond comprehension. Primary effect successful but insufficient for entity neutralization, Kiyomi reported urgently. Structural integrity compromised but self-repair mechanisms activating at accelerated rates. Secondary convergence required, Chronoa determined. All vectors reposition for synchronized follow-up strike. The Chrono Devourer, however, had adapted to their strategy with disturbing intelligence. It suddenly fragmented its existence across additional temporal states, effectively diluting the impact of their targeted approach. Worse, it began launching temporal consumption vortices toward each team member, not merely attacking their physical forms but attempting to erase their entire causal histories. Goku narrowly avoided a consumption vortex that would have removed him from existence entirely. The near miss caused momentary temporal feedback, his body briefly cycling through different age states as his personal timeline temporarily destabilized. The disorientation left him vulnerable to a secondary attack that struck with partial effect, sending him tumbling through fractured dimensional space. Emperor status critical, Serafina reported with uncharacteristic urgency. Primary target repositioning to complete temporal erasure. Through the disorientation, Goku sensed the team's positions becoming compromised as the Chrono Devourer's counterattack forced them into defensive postures, preventing coordinated response. A new strategy was required, one that leveraged the creature's current focus on him as primary threat. Everyone converge on my position, he commanded through momentary pain as his temporal coherence fluctuated. Bring your disruptors and prepare for close-range deployment. That tactical approach exceeds acceptable risk parameters, Serafina objected professionally. It's also our best chance, Goku countered. This thing adapts to distributed attacks too quickly. We need concentrated impact at unified coordinates. After momentary hesitation, Chronoa provided divine authorization. Convergence protocol approved. All vectors relocate to Emperor's coordinates. Through various dimensional transit methods appropriate to their unique natures, the team members repositioned to Goku's location, Mitsuko quantum shifting, Alara navigating dimensional shortcuts. Serafina executing precise Guardian translocation, Kiyomi utilizing modified transport technology, and Chronoa simply restructuring local temporal architecture to bring herself directly adjacent. The Chrono Devourer recognized the tactical shift, multiple consumption vortices converging toward their now unified position with increasing speed. What's the plan? Mitsuko demanded, her quantum form fluctuating more rapidly under stress. Something I've been working on but haven't had chance to test, Goku explained quickly. A modification of temporal harmonics based on Serafina's training and Kiyomi's theoretical models. He extended his hands, creating a spherical field of controlled temporal energy that encompassed the entire team. Unlike his previous techniques that projected power outward as force, this application created a unified temporal field where all participants existed in perfect synchronization despite their drastically different natural chronon frequencies. Everyone, channel your energy through me, he instructed. Not to me, but through the connection points I'm establishing. As the team complied, an unprecedented harmonic pattern emerged, Chronoa's divine temporal essence. Mitsuko's quantum fluctuations, Alara's celestial navigation patterns, Kiyomi's scientific precision, and Serafina's disciplined guardian techniques all flowing through Goku's unique cellular structure that somehow accommodated these wildly different energy signatures simultaneously. The effect created a temporal resonance of extraordinary complexity, a harmonic pattern that directly countered the Chrono Devourer's chaotic consumption methodology. As the creature's vortices reached them, Goku inverted the unified field, transforming from defensive shell to offensive projection with explosive force. The resulting discharge transcended conventional energy attacks, a perfect temporal harmonic that propagated throughout the Chrono Devourer's entire multidimensional existence simultaneously. Unlike their previous targeted strikes against specific vulnerability points, This harmonic disruption affected the fundamental pattern of the creature's temporal composition across all states of existence. The Chrono Devourer's response defied conventional description, its form simultaneously imploding and exploding across multiple dimensional frequencies as the harmonized temporal energy unraveled its complex existence pattern. The massive entity fragmented into countless smaller components, each rapidly destabilizing as the harmonic disruption continued propagating through its structure. Entity integrity collapsing across all observed temporal states, Kiyomi reported with breathless scientific excitement. Complete dimensional destabilization in progress. The harmony pattern is unprecedented. Chronoa observed with wonder. 5 distinct temporal frequencies channeled through a 6th integrating medium to create perfect destructive resonance against chaotic consumption patterning. The Chrono Devourer's final dissolution released massive amounts of previously consumed temporal energy, timeline fragments suddenly freed from its digestive process. The team's unified field protected them from the chaotic discharge, though the surrounding dimensional space experienced significant disruption as reality itself struggled to reintegrate the suddenly released temporal components. As the immediate threat dissipated, Goku maintained the harmonic field long enough for Chronoa to establish stabilization protocols for the surrounding dimensional region. Only when secure dimensional boundaries had been restored did he finally release the unified temporal connection, allowing each team member to return to their natural energy state. The effort exacted immediate physical toll. Goku staggered, his body exhibiting alarming temporal desynchronization, parts of him briefly existing seconds apart from others, creating a visual effect of partial fragmentation across multiple timelines. The emergency power infusion had accelerated his cellular deterioration significantly, as Chronoa had warned. His temporal coherence is critical, Kiyomi assessed urgently. We need to return to the Nexus immediately for stabilization procedures. Through combined effort, the team managed emergency dimensional transit back to the Eternity Nexus. Kiyomi and Chronoa immediately began stabilization protocols while Serafina secured the surrounding area against potential secondary threats. Mitsuko and Alara analyzed the dimensional aftermath of the Chrono Devourer's destruction, ensuring no dangerous temporal fragments remained active. In the medical chamber, Kiyomi worked frantically to stabilize Goku's increasingly erratic temporal fluctuations. His cellular structure showed advanced chronon saturation, with deterioration progressing faster than previous projections had indicated. The harmonic convergence technique accelerated cellular degradation beyond sustainable parameters. She reported with clinical precision that barely masked genuine concern. Temporal coherence failing at exponential rates. Can you stabilize him? Chronoa questioned, lending her divine energy to support the medical systems. Temporarily, Kiyomi acknowledged, but the fundamental problem remains. His mortal form cannot sustain Emperor-level temporal integration without permanent modification to his existential pattern. As they worked, Goku drifted in and out of consciousness, his perception shifting between normal awareness and expanded temporal vision where he simultaneously experienced countless potential timelines. During one moment of clarity, he focused on Chronoa. The sacred union you mentioned, he managed despite fluctuating temporal coherence. Would it actually work? The goddess met his gaze directly, momentary vulnerability visible beneath her divine composure. It remains our most viable solution for permanent stabilization. The ritual would. Something went wrong with this response. Please try again. Build follow-up. Blank, _ blank. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.